Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. I want to hear about how you've grown Unique Pathways. You've grown it for more than a decade while still staying very mission focused. What originally pushed you to start the company, and what vision do you want to create differently?
When I initially started the company, I was looking at a need. I had started in ABA back in the late 90s, and it was all home based, parent paid. There wasn't insurance, there wasn't BCBAs. So when I started the company, I wanted to continue with the mission of what I had initially got into the field for, which was to help the kids be the best versions that they could be. And I wanted to reach more people, more families during that time. And I thought owning a company would help me do that, meaning I would get to work with more kids. That was completely the opposite. However, what did work for me was that I did learn how to find mission oriented individuals and professionals who not only care about the science of ABA, but care about the outcomes for the kids. And so that was my primary focus, was what could we do to help our next generation of children and ABA professionals move into this industry and make this meaningful change.
I love that. And I think you've had a lot of that impact. Even if you don't get to work with the kids daily anymore, you've definitely had that impact. Shifting topics a little bit, I know you've spoken openly about learning how to say no as a leader. And I think that's part of your mentality when it comes to leadership. How did that shift change the way that you approach growth and decision making? And how do you lead now using that approach?
That's a great question because I try not to say no. I try to say more no, not right now, unless that's just a hard stop. Maybe it doesn't align with my value system or it doesn't align with our mission of the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish. But a lot of times it's more of a maybe not right now. So let's table this and get to a place where we have grown that we can accomplish this goal, and that seems to help a lot because then it puts the seed, it plants the seed, and then we can start preparing for that, building a foundation for it so that when it's time to reintroduce it, we can now say, yes, let's move forward.
That makes a lot of sense. Another part of your leadership philosophy centers, I know, around a lot of culture and retention. What have you learned about building teams that genuinely stay connected to the mission and stay long term?
Always making sure that any feedback that you're giving to your team is mission driven first. So if we're going to say that we're truly about the mission of our company, then any accountability measures, any feedback, any mentoring has to stem from that mission first. So there has to be this understanding of why this is affecting the kids or why it could be affecting families or the team or the individuals. And so I believe that is also making sure that you're on repeat of what your mission is, reminding everybody, hey, this is why we're here. You have a great responsibility in shaping this child's life. And that's not only a responsibility, that's a gift. And reminding people of that too, that what an amazing gift that you have had to show, like when we have a child graduate, like you were part of that. Like, how amazing is that? So keeping that mission at the forefront of everything we do and any feedback that we provide, whether it's coaching feedback, whether it's accountability measures, whether it's just, hey, great job, but always making sure that we tie it back to why that is so important in the mission.
I love that. I think sometimes it's hard to communicate how things are tied back to the mission. Even if they are mission driven, sometimes it's still hard to be like, well, our policy about how you behave in the break room still does have an impact long term. It can be hard, but it makes complete sense of why that is so important.
And sometimes you just have to show people how those dots are connected and understanding that nothing happens is truly personal, but you have to just remember that we have to think outside of ourselves because this is a field that you do need to think outside of yourself. It can't be about you.
Absolutely. And I think if you're in this field, you're likely care more about the people outside of yourself anyway.
Exactly.
So I know that you've grown your team a ton, especially just like in the last 2 years. What have you found is the hardest part of growing your team?
I think the hardest part is making sure that the day-to-day communication and teamwork do not take a hit. I see that running 4 centers, my time is very split now, and I put a leadership team under me that's amazing, but there's still that making sure everybody we're all so busy that we're intentional in our communication, that when we do have a meeting, I don't know if you've heard the book Death by Meeting, They're very productive. We have an agenda. We want to get in, we want to get out. We want everybody in there. We don't want to waste 2 hours of everybody just bantering. So, the intentionality of the communication is probably one of the biggest challenges because even when you bring in new team players, even if they align with your mission, there's so many little things that you can't put in a book. You can't put this in the employee handbook or the operations manual. There's so many tiny nuances. And then when you've worked together for so long, also there's things that drop when you bring in a new team member and you see your holes. So you have to be intentional with that communication with the new team members and the current ones because what we did a year ago may not apply to now because of the change and the growth.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I find there's often unspoken rules that just develop in an organization when you have length of time, and sometimes those are good things, but they're very hard for new people to learn.
Right, and that's very true. These are sort of the unspoken and when you've worked together for so
Mm.
long and you've developed this company with your entire team and leadership, when you bring in a new amazing person, you're gonna have to watch to make sure, "Oh, I'm gonna put that on the burner that I make sure that I am intentional about communicating to a new team member or this current team member that just joined us."
Absolutely. So, because we're a marketing agency that specializes in behavioral health, we always have to ask some marketing type questions. The first one is, what works best right now, especially outside of word of mouth, when it comes to client acquisition for your team?
Well, we're going through that right now. We're working with a marketing company that specializes solely in ABA marketing, and that has been a very great move on our end, especially in our newer locations where we're not as well known. We're so ingrained in the community, we've been there for so long, but the new communities that we've joined, we wanna get ingrained with those communities as well. So, I'm working now with a marketing company that only works with ABA, speech, OT companies, and we've been getting really great results with them so far.
That is fantastic. And if you don't mind me asking, what kind of marketing are you guys doing? Digital ads, website? Where are you guys focusing?
A little bit of everything. They focus solely on the social media ads, but I do have an amazing web designer that also does all of our SEOs and drives that for us as well. And he's also in the ABA industry. So we're working with marketers who understand ABA and understand what you're trying to accomplish. That was probably one of the better decisions I've ever made instead of just a marketing person who's telling me things. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of think you're missing the clientele on that one. Like it makes sense to me, but you have to think about the consumer and this is a special niche of people that you're trying to make sure that they're being communicated with.
And every industry has different quirks. I think that's one of the things that people just don't understand is how different marketing needs to be from an ABA route to a coffee shop. It's a very different world. So this makes complete sense. And then the last question is, what is one marketing tactic or strategy that either you're just watching really close in the marketplace or that you're actually considering for yourselves?
The one strategy that I've really emphasized with our current marketers is to emphasize the longevity that we have working with kids. I think that's really important, especially since every time I get on Facebook or any of these boards, I hear somebody wanting to start a new ABA center. I think the longevity speaks for itself for parents. There's a sense of trust that we've weathered, we've gone through this, we know what we're doing, we have good outcomes. That's something I've really emphasized with our marketing. The company has over a decade, but I mean, there's multiple decades of experience behind that decade of the company itself. So that is a big strategy that I'm really pushing. The organic and the organic side of it, privately owned company that's grown organically over the past decade.
That's awesome. It's great that you realize the advantage that is there. I think a lot of organizations miss that. It costs a lot, not necessarily visible, but if you don't communicate what makes you different, then you're the same. And if you're the same, then there's no reason to go to you versus anybody else down the street.
Well, and I will be honest, when I first started my company, I was like, well, we're amazing. I don't know why everybody just doesn't think we're amazing. Now that I've got skin in the game and I look back and I can see where even if I'm consulting or mentoring new business owners, I understand why there has to be this proof is in the pudding now. So I knew what we were going to do was going to be exceptional, that we were going to have good outcomes because I knew the people that work for me. But we had to be patient and we had to make sure that we built that trust along the way. And so I think that speaks for itself. And I think that's needs to be stated when you're marketing. Hey, look, we didn't just pop up on the side of the road because we thought this was going to be cool. We're in this for the long haul.
Absolutely. I love that you have realized the power that there is in communicating differentiation. I think more ABA owners, especially ABA clinicians, really need to learn that same principle. You're not legitimate until you've proven that you're legitimate, and you have to do that. It's just part of the world.
It is. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. We really appreciate you taking time and sharing some of your insights and experience with us.
Absolutely. Thank you again. I really enjoyed it.